So on Sunday, we hit the portion of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus is talking about our intentions. He talks about fasting, he talks about praying, he talks about giving to the poor, and says, don't do this in a way so that others can see it. Do it in private, keep it to yourself. That way, you'll know that your intentions are about the person that you're becoming, who God wants you to be, who you want to be, not just trying to win the admiration of those around you. And of course, this is an incredibly difficult thing to do. As human beings, we are social creatures. We are always driven by wanting to impress others. We're always driven by wanting to signal our virtue and appear righteous to those we want to impress. It's just part of what it means to be human. And of course, Jesus is not saying there's no place for public displays of righteousness. It's good, it's sacred, it's holy to get together and pray sometimes. Sometimes living your life in public in the best version of generosity and goodness is something that inspires people towards the best version of their life. So obviously we're meant to live our lives in public and to share our faith in those ways. But what Jesus is really getting at here is intention. Is your spirituality driven by wanting to impress, or is your spirituality driven by wanting to connect yourself to the heart of the universe? What is really true and who God really is? That's incredibly difficult because there's always some tension in all of our lives. And to be perfectly honest here, I live in a career where most of my life is built around a public persona. I get up on a Sunday and I speak and I teach, but that's not really me. That's me with a lot of preparation. That's me with a lot of thought going into what I want to say and how I want to present it. And that's not how I live my life all the time. I mean, I'm much more eloquent on a Sunday than I am talking to the camera here or just living my life Monday to Saturday. And I think what it comes down to for me, and this might be helpful for you, is really about that reminder. I know that I can never be 100% pure in my intention. There's always a little bit of ego. There's never humility in how I've reached it by Jeremy Duncan. There's always that mixture of arrogance and real desire to be the person I want to be to help the people around me. But when I'm aware of that tension, when I can name it for myself, when I can be honest with myself about it, that's where I can actually keep it in check. I think the scariest time is when we begin to believe that no, we are pure in all of our intentions, we have no ego, we're never driven by wanting to impress the people around us. When that creeps in and we begin to believe that narrative, I think that's actually when our ego just completely takes over. When we know that humility is the recognition of the tension we live within. That humility is recognizing that, yeah, I do want to impress people. Yeah, I do want to appear righteous. When I know that that's part of who I am, then I can keep it in check. I can find the balance. I can keep asking myself the question, am I doing this just for the people who are watching? Or is this really the person that I'm becoming? And that question constantly asked over and over again, not as a way to badger myself, not as a way to take away from the person that I'm becoming or think that I'm somehow a bad person for it, but just honestly being aware of the question, what's driving me here in this moment? And I think the reality is when we give ourselves space to ask that question and not to beat ourselves up knowing that a little bit of ego creeps in from time to time, but just saying, oh, there it is, always there, always pushing me, always taking me a little bit off course, but I know it, I recognize it, I'm not ashamed of it, and now I can direct myself back towards the person that I'm becoming. This is when we're the most healthy. I think the two extremes, believing that you have no ego, you have achieved humility, there's nothing in you that's even a little bit untoward, or just constantly beating yourself up for trying to impress people. Neither of these are really healthy. It's understanding that tension. It's understanding that question. It's constantly asking yourself, where are you? What's driving you? What in this moment is pushing you towards these choices right now? Because it's never constant. There are days when I am more insecure and I really want some praise from somebody around me. There are days where I'm really confident in who I am and who I'm becoming and how God is guiding me. And I really am on that day willing to do whatever it takes to follow the leading of the Spirit, regardless of what anyone thinks. But neither of those dominate my life every day. And so constantly getting up, reminding myself, who do I want to be? What's driving driving me today? How am I aware of that tension in my life? This is how I keep myself focused on the intention that Jesus calls us to. So recognize there's a time to pray in public. There's a time to pray with the people around you. That's good. It's holy. It's beautiful. Lean into that and honor that. There's a time for you to be generous in secret, away from the public eye, and there's a time for you to live publicly and generously in front of the people who are around you so that you might inspire them to follow this same God who is living in you and through you right now. The call of Jesus is never to be perfect, neither in our intentions or actions, but to constantly work to become the version of ourselves that God imagines us to be. And if we're on that journey, if we're heading in that direction, then I trust that God will be honored by our choices.